I see the department is also here. Today, I saw Dr. Kuzwayo. Sorry, man. The DG's office is here. Petra is here representing that office. And the team from SAT is also here. Let me take this opportunity and welcome all of you to our meeting, and I'm hoping to have a productive meeting today. And we saw you guys launching a media briefing in Cape Town for the tourism month, that we were invited to, but could not make it because of prior commitments. I'm going to allow
recording in progress
to assist us. We know that the term of office of SAT when we were in Durban, it was about to lapse. So it would be imperative for SAT to introduce the entire team before we start the meeting. I'm not sure if the CEO is on the platform or not, but I would ask that the CEO or the chairperson introduces the team before we could start with the meeting. And when introducing the team, I would urge that the videos be on so that we attach a face to a name. So in that order, over to you, SAT.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members, colleagues. And I'm the acting chief executive of South African Tourism, substantively the chief marketing officer. I am joined here by my executive team, the chief operating officer, Nomasonto Ndlovu, the chief financial officer, Mbulelo Kuliwe. I'm also joined here by the chief.
We don't see the faces of these people that you are mentioning here.
Okay, Nomasonto Ndlovu, she has, there she's waving.
We don't want the hand, we want the face. Okay, let me put my thing on gallery. Okay, yes, it's on gallery now. There, Nomasonto, okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Then the chief financial officer, Mbulelo Kuliwe.
Okay.
Then the chief quality assurance officer, Ms. Bronwyn Oret.
Okay.
And then the acting chief convention bureau officer, Zintle Nzama.
Why is she acting? Perhaps you must tell us, why do we have actors? Are we in a movie here? Okay.
Acting chief strategy officer, Mr. Robert Manson.
Okay, thank you.
Also got the acting company secretary, Takalani Ndo.
Where is Takalani Ndo?
Takalani. There's the
CEO Upu Takalani. Nangu because into yakhe blank apa imnyama ngathi yam uphi lo Takalani nangu where?
Honorable Chair, order please.
Yes.
Chair.
Yes.
Chairperson. I
Mm.
don't see any one of them. I only see the CEO and all of them in there. I've never
You
seen their
must change
faces.
the view on your gadgets to gallery, then you are going to see them.
Okay, Honorable Chair.
Okay, so I see Yolanda Kona. I don't see Tagalani though.
So that is Takalani. She's using Yoland's screen. And then now here's
Okay.
Yoland, and then now here's Yoland Kona.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
I see now. Mm.
And then the manager in the office of the CEO, Avril Pile,
Okay.
and our head of government and industry relations officer, Mr. Tony Nkadime.
Where is Tony Kadime? Tony's video is off.
Okay, there's Tony Nkadime on Bronwyn's.
Brownwin.
Yes,
Okay. Mm.
Tony Nkadime.
Right. Mm.
This is a team from the executive management of SA Tourism that is present here today to assist me in delivering this presentation to the committee.
So, CEO, just for the record, you said the chairperson is who?
I beg your pardon?
Who's the chairperson?
No, this is the executive management, not the interim.
Oh, not the, okay. All right.
Yes,
So, the,
yes,
okay. I was fine.
yes, the interim board should be introduced to the portfolio committee by the political principles. So I'm not qualified to do that.
I know sometimes you are not qualified, sometimes you qualify yourselves. I know. Yeah, when it's convenient, you are not qualified. But when you want to qualify yourself, you can do that. But it's okay. Honorable members, did you see the team as introduced by the CEO? Did you manage to see them so that we allow them to switch off their videos because of the network? It might be unstable because of the videos that are on. Mam Komba.
Yes, Honorable Chair, thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you, CEO. You can now proceed with the presentation, and we appreciate the fact that you have no apologies in your team. Okay. So you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Okay.
Share my screen. Take it into presentation. Is my screen visible, Honorable?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yes, so thank you very much for this opportunity to share our Q3 and Q4 performance for the organization. It's going to cover 5 areas, which is first the environmental analysis, then to go into the Q3 and Q4 performance against our APP, and then into the financial performance, and then the human capital and governance, and then we will have some concluding remarks. As I prepare to go into the environmental analysis, let me just say that we come to the portfolio committee today with an unqualified audit opinion by the AG as at the end of the financial year, also with very strong performance against our APP, a strong domestic market performance, and a very clear indication that our international markets are also rebounding. This is just to go through the overall mandate. Just a recap that we had the tourism sector recovery strategy, which was approved by this committee, which had 7 pillars to it. The main pillars that are associated with South African tourism is to stimulate domestic demand and also to execute programs that will reignite international demand. We then took these across 2 very distinct segments, which is our business event segments and also the leisure segments, cutting across and in this order of priority: domestic market, Africa region, focusing a lot on the SADC road access markets and also our short haul air markets, and then looking at the international markets as they mutually open with ourselves. These are the numbers in terms of the performance as at the end of the calendar year, of the financial year, March 2022. We've seen an high improvement of 18.4 million trips, which is 22.5% increase over the COVID period of March 2021. Yes, it is a decrease of 35.2% over 2019-2020, but clearly there's a growth trajectory over the last reporting period. From a revenue standpoint as well, you can see there 56.3 billion increase in revenue, which is a 7.4% increase over the 2019-20 period. This is just a lot more detailed indicators of our performance. As you can see, the domestic trips, 4.8 million, which is an increase of 0.5% in Q3, and then 6.2%, 6.2 million in Q4. So clearly you can see that as we came out of that Omicron lockdown period, we started seeing very strong growth in the domestic market across all of the indicators. The only indicator that was lagging behind was in the area of day trips, because what we started seeing is that there's an increase in people actually staying over rather than just doing day trips, which is actually better for the economy because it means people are utilizing, the accommodation as part of the tourism sector. Then moving on to our international numbers, focusing on the Africa region. As we can see there, we've got very strong performance as well coming out of our Africa region, SADC and the Sub-Saharan, Africa region. Also just to indicate that the area where we've seen the strongest growth is out of Europe, yes, because that is, the core international market, but the fastest growing international market that we have is actually North America. What happened is that when we were in Q3, as we know, the Johnson administration in the UK, put us on the red list. The Biden administration out of North America kept North America open to us. So we saw very strong growth coming out of there, out of three very specific sectors, which is the high-end, high spending safari, luxury market. We also saw a very strong increase in the African-American travelers coming into the country, which are more culture seekers, coming to really engage with the culture of our country. And we're also seeing a lot of millennial travel coming out of North America, which are people that travel for purpose. They travel to countries that have got social justice as part of their base, which is all around sustainable conservation, inclusivity. And we can see that the world is now beginning to look very strongly towards South Africa for leadership in these areas. Again, from an international market standpoint, as you can see from the Americas, you got 748.2% increase over 2020-21. Great growth out of the North American market, as I indicated. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there is a very sharp increase in terms of our international growth, which is also aided by a lot of direct airlift. And I'll speak to that in a moment, that when you've got direct airlift out of key markets, you tend to see a resurgence of that travel. And as you know, United Airlines and Delta Airlines are flying directly out of the USA into Johannesburg and into Cape Town. And that direct airlift has really assisted in terms of cutting the travel time out of the USA into South Africa, and has helped to increase the return of international travel from that region. The region that is still struggling, as we may all be aware, is Asia. And that is because of the issues around China travel, and because when China travel shuts down, it affects the Hong Kong hub, and when that hub is affected, it affects the throughput of traffic from that particular region. But we're monitoring that situation and managing our spend investment to make sure that we are focused on the areas where we're actually able to get a return. Again, this is just a finer view of the indicators in terms of international arrivals and international spend. As you can see there, the length of stay has actually increased. So, you can see 29.7% increase in Q3. So people are coming into the country and they're spending longer in the country, which is good for the increase of spend in the destination as that dwell time in the market is increased. Again, from a foreign spend standpoint, we can see there a 261.8% increase in spend, which over the previous period, which shows that the economic recovery is really coming back into the tourism sector. And Africa and Europe continue to be the bulk, but as I said, the USA is our fastest growing market. Now I'd like to go into the Q3 and Q4 performance against our APP results. In Q3 and Q4, we have seen a very strong performance, and as I said, we coming on the base of an unqualified audit, which means all of the the underperformance areas were found not to be material. And by the time we had gone through the audit process, a lot of these had actually been closed down to the satisfaction of the AG. Let me just go through. This is just an overview of the overall performance of the organization. Our employment equity, very strong performance there. And in terms of the payroll, the payment performance, which is mandated by our government in terms of supporting SMMEs and paying our suppliers on time, all of that is on track. Also, in terms of the percentage of women in leadership, that performance is also very strong from an organizational standpoint. And also, our employment equity is consistent and exceeding the expectations in the reporting period. Without bogging down the committee, there is detail in the presentation in terms of the actual areas where there was strong performance, all green, and some of the areas, the action points that were overdue. A lot of those were around some of the actions in the audit area, but we closed down most of these issues, and the ones that were not closed down were found not to be material over this period. In terms of the performance in the TGCSA area, this was a systems issue, and it was also impacted by the tourism recovery period. Now, what happened during the COVID period is a lot of the establishments lost their revenue. And when it came to the period where we had to now go through grading again, a lot of the establishments simply did not have the financial muscle to be able to invest in the refurbishment of their establishments to meet the grading system. So what they did is, because this is a voluntary system, some of the establishments opted out of the period while they're going through recovery. So when we rolled over the database from the pre-COVID system to the current system, some of those establishments did not roll over because they were not ready to go through the grading process. And that is really what that shortfall is about. It will course correct as those establishments come back online, and they're able to invest in the fundamentals of reaching that, that grading thresholds in the pre-COVID period. So that is what that underperformance in that area pertain to. And then in terms of the staff engagement, the NPS score we tend to do in Q3 and Q4 at the end of the financial year. And as members would be aware, over this period, especially in Q4, there was a moratorium on procurement across government, and the appointment of the service provider that does this exercise for us was adversely impacted in that period, and that is why that particular score was down. But that has been course corrected in the new financial year, and as we go through this new financial year, we should be able to report on that NPS score. The employment equity performance, as I've already indicated, all of these areas, positive performance, and there's nothing really to point out in this particular area. If you go into program 2, which is business enablement, again, the performance is very strong in this area. There was the Inaugural Global Advocacy program, which we launched in February, and that we have continued to drive. In fact, the work in this area started before February 10, over the period where we were on the red list in the UK. And we focus a lot of our effort in terms of getting South Africa off the red list in that, out of the UK, which also affected the way in which the UAE responded to South Africa. And as we know, Dubai is a very big, travel hub, and it was important that we focus both on the UK and also in the UAE in order to recover travel into South Africa. And that's where we concentrated our effort together with other state players, and we were able to get off the red list in the UK and restore travel to South Africa out of the UK and through the Dubai hub. Let me also just segue at this point, just to say that in May this year, which is not part of this reporting period, but obviously the work had started during this report, the Q3 and Q4, we signed a landmark agreement with Emirates Airlines, landmark, MOU, which enables us to market not just into our route, which is Dubai into South Africa, but to market into all 130 routes where the Emirates Airlines flies. So what that has enabled us to do is to target travelers who have traveled long haul elsewhere in the world, but have not been to South Africa. So that marketing effort has now enabled us to be very targeted, but on a wide net of reaching all of the database that sits inside the Emirates Airlines. And that, is part of what we've been doing from an advocacy standpoint to make sure that we message the benefits of coming to South Africa, but at the same time that we deal with some of the travel barrier issues that have been plaguing us for a while. So that is where we are on business enablement. And I believe that this has been a very strong performance. Just to go through, some of the detail in terms of some of the MOUs, there were certain actions that, were lagging behind, due to meetings being canceled, but we have been very vigilant in making sure that we engage in our stakeholder environment and are able to continue to drive the MOUs that we have signed with various entities. As you can see in terms of the Lilizela Awards, because of the supply side issues from a tourism recovery standpoint, we felt that to do an award ceremony under the circumstances of tourism recovery would have been insensitive at the time. So that has been deferred to a later period, and that is why that particular deliverable was not implemented. In terms of the B2B portal, members will be aware, and I'll speak to this again, towards the end of the meeting, that there was a litigation that came out of the forensic investigation and the audit around this B2B area. Where we are sitting right now is we are in litigation with the entities affected. We are waiting a court date to be able to go to court and argue this case, and then be able to resolve it one way or another, and then be able to proceed on this. This portal is critical for bringing SMMEs on board and giving them market access. So it is very front and center for us to conclude the litigation so that we can be able to get back to this B2B portal and be able to implement it. And I'll be open to discussing this further in this meeting. Thank you. And then in terms of industry engagements, as I said, there are no major issues here. The performance has been solid in terms of Q3 and Q4 in our core business. All of that has been properly implemented. In program 3, which is the core business of marketing, we achieve all of our targets from the international, from a regional, and from a domestic standpoint. All of those have been achieved. The domestic deal-driven campaigns that we have been able to drive, focusing on the key travel periods throughout the year, those we all implemented, and they've yielded us very strong results. And let me also just touch on the Dubai Expo, which was in December. We were able to implement in the month of December from a tourism standpoint, and implement all of our programs on the ground in the UAE, in Dubai. From a travel standpoint, because I have been asked this question, so I'll take advantage of that. We only sent one person, so there wasn't a big entourage that went there. We had one team member on the ground on the other side who had a very clear mandate, and we had prepared all of our programs and the content ahead of time. So by the time our colleague was on the ground on the other side, he had a very strong support system from the South Africa side, and also working together with our embassy in the UAE, in particular our consul general, very, very strong support there. And we were able to implement all of our programs on the ground in the UAE in the month of December. We came in budget, everything was above board, and there are no issues in terms of the execution in the Dubai Expo. So in terms of tourist arrivals, as you can see for Q4, the target was 2.6. We achieved 2.9%. Very strong performance. Again, in terms of regional arrivals, the target was 2 million. We were 2.3. So very strong performance, across the board by the team. If you look at domestic day trips, 3.1 was the target. We're at 4.6. So in every single area, there was very, very strong performance across the board. In terms of the brand strength index, as members will be aware, this is a survey-based exercise where we have to go out and interview people in the marketplace. That we had to balance between the restrictions that the travel restrictions that had been imposed, and making sure that we don't go out and survey at a time when people are not traveling. So as we were balancing out all of that, there was also a adjustment that needed to be made in the tender process to make sure that by the time we actually start the survey again, we have made all the adjustments so that we collect the right kind of data that gives us a forward-looking view rather than only a retrospective one. So there were delays in the tender process there. This has since been resolved. I can report confidently that this particular supplier has now been contracted, and the survey will be going in field and will be able to report on the brand strength in this financial year. In terms of the domestic, I've already spoken about all of our deal-driven campaigns, so I'll not dwell too much on that. And in terms of our regional performance, I've already spoken about that. And then in terms of our global campaign was launched on the 28th of February at Meetings Africa on Mandela Square. The Live Again campaign, it was very powerfully received domestically and internationally. We also launched our Open Doors campaign for our business event sector, which is very targeted in terms of getting bids won and bringing, meetings, incentives, conventions, exhibitions, and mega events into the country. So all of that effort, was launched in February, and it is now being rolled out in each of our source markets in order for it to yield arrival results and spend in our economy. So that, has been done and has been implemented. Just to proceed on to business events, as mentioned, we had we took a decision not to do Africa's Travel Indaba and Meetings Africa, during the lockdown period. We had our, summit that we did in September just to get the industry back together. And then what we did is we started in earnest, and we had Meetings Africa in February, and we also had Africa's Travel Indaba in this new financial year in May. So we have been able to restore our, strategic platforms back into, operation. In addition to that, we have been driving our bid support as well, bid support program, really making sure that in the areas where we know that we've got very strong bidders that are bidding to bring meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibitions and mega events into the country, that we are able to support those bidders in terms of winning those bids and bringing them to South Africa. And we've got a whole list of those that were successful. Those are just some of the highlights on the right-hand side of the page. Again, in terms of getting the baseline on our brand strength index, it's the same comment as I made on the other one for leisure. In terms of developing the content has all been developed for all of our segments, looking at each of the 6 verticals inside of our business events platform. And we've been able to drive very successfully with our Saki, our partners, making sure that we drive the Open Doors campaign very powerfully to each of the target audiences in the verticals, and all of that portfolio of evidence was submitted and was acceptable to the Auditor General. And then finally, as we go into, I'll just skip to the last segment, which is tourist experience, which is program 5. Again, there we saw very strong performance in tourist experience, which is making sure that all of our trade shows, from an SMME standpoint, this is the supply side of the industry. As I said, the rollover of the suppliers from the old database to the new one, and the renewal of their grading credentials. There was, some issues in terms of that particular rollover. And we'll be able to course correct that as we go through the financial year. In terms of the attendance of all our international trade shows, we've been able to go there and be able to really drive, give market access to our, exhibitors into that area. And that, was all executed across each of our international platforms. As you can see there, when we went overseas the last time, 30% on SMMEs, 41% on women-owned, enterprises, 36% on youth-owned businesses, and 9% on PWD-owned businesses. So very targeted, very, focused performance in terms of our tourist experience deliverables. So again, the NPS score, I've already spoken to that. The establishments have already spoken to that. And without further ado, I'd like, with your permission, to hand over to the CFO to take us through the financial performance of the organization. And then I will come back in and go through the human capital and governance, and then we will conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'm on slide 51 of the pack, the revenue management slide, where we show the cumulative impact of Q3 and Q4 on our revenue line during the period under review. In 93% of our total revenue came from the transfer from the department. It's our most significant line item, with 7% coming from other revenue streams, which is the TOMSA voluntary levy, followed by grading fees, as well as sundry revenue. Sundry revenue includes exhibition income, the income that we generate from exhibiting in Meetings Africa, as well as Africa's Travel Indaba. I think just to go line by line, I've just confirmed that we were on target in terms of the transfer from the department that we received during the quarter under review, which was just above 1.2 billion rand. Then the second line item, which is the voluntary TOMSA levy, we received, Chair, or we accrued just over 8 million more than what we had targeted. And the reason for that is that we received confirmation from the TBCSA on the 31st of March, 2022, that the amount that it accrued to SA Tourism by the end of the financial year was 58 million rand. And so because of the timing, the cash flow actually came in Q1. But because we comply with GRAP when we prepare our financial statements, we had to accrue for the receivable at the end of the financial year, which is the 58 million rand. So the process in terms of then how do we then relocate the 58 million rand or the 8 million rand over recovery to other projects. We've gone through a process. It's something that we do annually with all our commitments or money that we have at year end, where we go to Treasury and we declare the amounts that we have, and we ask for permission to roll. It's due for all public entities by the end of August. So once we receive the approval from Treasury, those funds will be reallocated to our marketing efforts, domestic and international marketing efforts. And then our next revenue line item is the grading fees that we charge. The key reason, Chair, therefore, for the higher or the over recovery is due to the number of establishments that actually qualified for TIP, which is our tourism incentive program. Members would know that in our balance sheet, we keep unearned revenue, which is the amount that we get from the department for tourism or TIP, we call it TIP money. And then as members qualify for the amount, we then recognize that income amount in the income statement of our financials. And then just lastly, it's sundry revenue. I've touched on this. There was an under recovery. And Chair, it's mostly due to the fact that when we had Meetings Africa, we had a limitation in terms of the number of people that could exhibit. And because of that limitation on the volumes, it had a corresponding link to our actual revenue that we then collected during Meetings Africa in February 2022. Next slide, please. Thank you. Chair, I'm now on the expenditure slide, which is slide 52 of the presentation. And it shows how we then allocated those resources that we had projected for the financial year, and how we have tracked across the quarters when you compare your budget or when you do your budget versus actual analysis per program. We've got 5 programs, and the first one is corporate support. Chair, the actual expenditure is 116 million rand versus 101 or 101.3 million rand. And the key thing that I need to emphasize there, which is in fact similar to other quarters and also other financial years, is that in corporate support, you have a number of non-cash transactions that we need to account for because we comply with GRAP. So included in the 116.9 million actual expenditure for corporate support are your non-cash transactions, like your depreciation and amortization. We account for it in that line item. We also then account for our Forex transactions in program 1. So when we do our financials and we have to consolidate our foreign denominated financial records, there's an unrealized Forex loss that comes through. And that unrealized Forex loss is accounted for as part of actual expenditure. And that's why you normally find that your expenditure is more than your budget. The reason for that is that your budget would be your cash budget, whereas actual expenditure is both your accounting entries as well as the cash transaction that are related to that program. And then just secondly, on business enablement, which is our program 2 and is linked to, it's the work that we do in the insights and analytics space, as well as the Digitech. Chair, there was we spent 69% of our total budget. And in fact, it's the actual financial impact. It's something you can link to the performance information report that the acting CEO has just gone through. The key reasons for under expenditure in that environment were due to those targets that were not met at the end of Q4, which can be linked to, there was a contract or the brand tracker transactions, which we spoke to when we were going through the performance information report, as well as in the IT environment. Is linked to systems and the business process automation project that was not completed by the end of Q4. And then program 3, which is our largest investment line item, it's the leisure tourism marketing. Chair, this is where we account for all our transactions in the brand and marketing space, as well as tourism execution. So all the work, the conversion work that is done by our country offices that we have to market SA tourism. In this area, Chair, we spent 90% of our total budget when you compare what we had planned or projected versus our actual expenditure. And the key reason there is because key campaigns were only launched in Q4 of the financial year, with the most significant portions attributable to global advocacy, as well as the global the brand campaign. Those were launched during Meetings Africa in 2022. And in fact, the impact is also seen in Q1 because that 10% variance that those transactions are in fact happening in the current quarter because of the delays in fact on the global advocacy transaction, which were not receipted in Q4, but there has been, I can confirm, there has been movement in Q1 of the financial year related to that specific transaction. Next program is program 4. It's where we account for all our transactions that are related to our MICE environment, so business events. We spent here 95% of our total budget for the financial year. Chair, again, this is one program where the spend is consistent with the previous financial year. And in fact, the 5%, it's something that we disclosed annually in our financials and to the AG, and it gets audited. We have commitments because there are future-looking commitments in the space for bid support. So that 5% it relates to the 5% under recovery. So the process that we go through with the 5% is similar to what I mentioned when I was talking to the revenue line item for voluntary TOMSA levies. We take the amounts that have been audited and disclosed in the financials as commitments. We disclose them to National Treasury in line with the Treasury note that deals with retention of surpluses by public entities. We then motivate for a rollover, and that process has already happened, and we are waiting feedback from Treasury. Then the last program chair is visitor experience. This is where we account for all our transactions that deal with quality assurance. In that program chair, we spent 82% of our planned budget, and the key reason for the underspent in program 5, it was linked to the hosting toolkit transactions, which was not completed by the end of the financial year, or by the end of quarter 4. We can then go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Chair, this is the final financial slide, and in this specific slide, we show what I've already presented per program expenditure in an economic classification view, where we analyze COE, so our cost of employees, goods and services, as well as CAPEX spent versus quarter on quarter. What is key to note here, specifically for the COE line item, is that our total expenditure for the financial year, which also then includes quarter 3 and quarter 4, we closed off at 94%. And the key reason for that, Chair, was due to the vacancy rate that we had, because this line item is driven by the number of employees that we currently have. So, and that's the reason we had the 94%. It's also key to note that in the COE line item, we also accrue for non-cash items. There are provisions that we make for employees that are included in this line item. There's a medical aid provision, so we include that here, and any other employee-related provisions would be included. Most provisions are by nature non-cash, but because we comply with GRAP when we compile our financial statements, we need to include the impact of those transactions as part of our actual expenditure. And then lastly, it's the 91%. I already spoke to the reasons for variances, Chair, in the previous slide. The reason why there was a 91% under recovery is mostly due to those projects that were not receipted at the end of the financial year. And that's also linked to CAPEX. CAPEX 65% is mostly due to the fact that there were systems that needed to be delivered by year end, and those were not delivered by year end. And it's also linked to the info that we provided in the performance information report. Thank you, Chair. I will pause here and hand back to the CEO.
Thank you very much, CFO. Again, I'm just going to pick up on the human capital and governance aspects of the organization, and then we will take it from there. This is a recruitment at a senior level that I'd like to bring to the attention of the committee. The Chief Operating Officer, as I've mentioned, was recruited, and that is Nomasonto Ndlovu, who started on the 1st of July. There's also the Chief Quality Assurance Officer, Ms. Bronwyn Oret, who also started on the 1st of July. We did go to market for the GM Human Capital, and that search is still underway, because we need to find a particular kind of resource to take us into the future in this area. We have the GM PR and Global Communications, Ms. Tandiwe Matibela, who was also appointed, and also the GM Strategic Events, which is Zinhle Nzama, who is also acting as a Chief Convention Bureau Officer right now. So at the top level, we have got stability in terms of the leadership of the organization. We are now in the process of working one level down from there to make sure that we have the technical capability to drive the results as we drive tourism recovery, both domestically, regionally, and internationally. The next one is just the stats on the employment equity. As you can see, very strong at the top level in terms of Africans in the professional layer in particular, very strong in senior leadership and in the professional quality, the qualified level in terms of women. And we are very happy with the shape of the diversity across the organization, both at the top leadership standpoint and in the management and qualified levels of the organization. We believe that it brings diversity of thinking, diversity of perspectives, and it is therefore to create a very dynamic and future-focused organization. In terms of the South African Tourism Board, this is just to report on Q3 and Q4 in terms of the meetings that were held. Those are the special, the scheduled and special board meetings that were held over this period. As members will be aware, this was a high activity period when we were managing through the staged reopening of tourism. So there was a lot more board interaction that was required in order to provide leadership to the organization over that period, which we really appreciated. And I believe that we finished the year very strong and were able to deliver a good set of numbers across the board. And then finally, just concluding thoughts that from a performance standpoint, our domestic market continues to be the bedrock for tourism recovery. We saw very strong performance in domestic, and we now have a supply side shape that I believe will be able to sustain the industry going forward. Also from an Africa region standpoint, we're seeing very strong arrivals out of the region. And as members would know, most of the strongest tourism markets around the world have a strong domestic and have a strong regional, intra-regional, tourism base. And that is one of the things that we are really driving together with, our colleagues in the SADC region and in East and West Africa, in particular, to make sure that we really build a strong and resilient domestic and African tourism base so that we can shore ourselves, against any future lockdown. And then finally, from a financial standpoint, we obtained an unqualified audit opinion from the Auditor General, which has really, really encouraged the organization that we're back in a good governance space and that we will, begin to now build momentum for the organization going forward. And I'd like to really take this opportunity to thank the CFO and our head of, strategic planning unit in particular, as well as the rest of the team, obviously, but in particular, these two colleagues who have really, really been exceptional in terms of holding the line, both financially and from a performance standpoint, to make sure that this organization is restored to its blue chip performance that it is known for. And thank you very much. I will end the presentation here. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, CEO, for the presentation. I'm going to allow the honorable members to deliberate on the presentation. I just want to commend an SAT for entrusting so much women in top leadership positions. It's quite impressive and a rare instance, especially in such institutions. So at least we do have an entity that recognizes the skill and capacity of women, and safe to say, well done. Your appointments, for sure, they went through the eye of the needle, and I trust that those women will bring change and contribute meaningfully to the institution. I see a lot of hands from the honorable members. Honorable Winkler, you are going to be number 1. Honorable Makubela, number 2. Honorable Freitas, number 3. Honorable Gomba, number 4. Honorable Maneli, number 5. In that order, honorable members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officials from South African Tourism that presented. I have a few questions. The first is, how far has SAT actually gone in filling the post of Chief Executive Officer? And I know there had been mention of us being introduced to the new board. So what is the actual current status on that? When was it finalized? And when is this introduction going to take place? Then, has there been any fruitless and wasteful expenditure or irregular expenditure reported for this last quarter? And the other issue is, with regards to the revenue that was accrued via the grading fees, the extra revenue, what was this actually then spent on? And the last thing is, what were the specific findings of the forensic investigation into the B2B and B2C portal, and has there been any consequence management on that? And the last question is, with regards to domestic tourism, I think a lot of it is being hampered by the fact that there aren't enough airlines operating. There are not enough flights available, especially if you're coming from Durban to Cape Town or Durban to Joburg. And probably it's some regular occurrence on other domestic routes. Has there been any engagement by SAT with any stakeholders, because this is a huge problem in terms of impeding domestic tourism? Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members, colleagues, and members from SAT. Forgive me for my coarse voice. I've got a terrible flu. The first question that I want to raise is on the issue of the interim board. Can the acting Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Khumalo, indicate to us on what terms is the interim board established? Because in terms of the Tourism Act is silent on interim. It talks to the tourism board. Can perhaps maybe we get advised on how do you establish, or how the establishment of an interim board is connected with what the legislation that governs tourism SA comes about. That's just for information so that we can understand fully how do you establish an interim board, and where do we locate this interim board in terms of the legislation or the Tourism Act, because the Tourism Act only talks of the tourism board. Then the second question is, what collaborations and programs and campaigns that you have put in place for the upcoming festive season, so that we reignite and get South Africans traveling and experiencing their countries, that will boost even the far rural areas where tourism does not necessarily happen, but we know that during the festive season, people visit their hometowns, so that there is this geographic spread, because we see that throughout the year, tourism is concentrated in 3 main cities. But during festive season, because people travel back to their hometowns, what programs or collaborations have you put in place with companies in small towns, so that tourism can be reignited? The third and last question is on the progress and update on e-visas. What lessons can we be given in terms of the rolling out? Does it make the travel, ease of travel, and can we then point out to say this destination or this country, because we have introduced e-visas, we see that more tourists are coming because people do not want to be delayed in the previous system of visa application. Can we then be just given information on what is the impact of the e-visa regime in terms of tourist numbers coming into South Africa? That will be my 3 questions for now, Chairperson. Thank you.
In that order.
Thanks, Chair. It's Anita Freitas. I'm going to keep my camera off with your indulgence. I've got a very erratic signal, so I won't put my camera on. Thanks again to the presenters for a very clear presentation. There are just a few questions of clarity I have. There was mention in the presentation that that grading fees weren't received, and I wasn't sure what I must have missed it. What the problem seemed to have been there. So if we could just unpack that a little bit more as to where the problem was with the grading fees. Then mention was interesting. Was noted, I found interesting, was that marketing is taking place in places like Emirates Airlines and so forth, and that's very good news. Is there a way that you measure the success of these marketing campaigns? I know, in the case of Emirates, it's because it's got a wide network and reaches many markets and so forth. But how do we know that those are the markets that are reacting and responding to this marketing? So if we could tell us a little bit more. And then with regards to the Expo, and specifically the Dubai Expo was spoken about. Now, although I think it's good news that a minimum amount of people is sent, how do we ensure that we have a professional stand at the end of the day at the expos, make sure that it is presented and that we are represented well. It's all very well to have somebody from the embassy or the consulate, but if they're not the right people to be at these stands, then a lot of it may be pointless. And then my last point, I wanted just to add on to the questions about the current board status. How is this board operating in the interim? These questions may not, you may not be able to respond because it may be through the minister that is the right person to speak to. But I'm going to take a chance anyway. What is the status of the board members at the moment? And is there a deadline by which this interim board will terminate its mandate? And does this affect any decisions that the board need to make? Can the board make such decisions? And then my very last question is with regards to visas. Somebody did mention earlier, and I do know that it falls a lot in the foot of Home Affairs, but perhaps the SAT could just help us if they know the answer, and that is with regards visas, looking at alternative visas, not just necessarily e-visas, but also automatic visas, as many other countries are now doing, where things are automated and very quick without actually even leaving your laptop. Has that kind of investigation been looked into? And as things stand at the moment, how do our markets domestically and internationally, when they are traveling and crossing into other borders, how are vaccinated and unvaccinated people dealt with at the moment? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I'm number 4. Let me first welcome the presentation, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I firstly want to comment on the manner of reporting
template which is used, I see the department, when we had the previous meeting with the Department of Tourism, it had its presentations and presented its figures in percentages. Today, we have the entity presenting into figures. So there is inconsistency in terms of reporting between the two departments. And it makes it difficult for the committee members to actually evaluate them through the percentages, which I think we'll be able to see easily if the underspending was 30% or 20% of the total value of the budget. So I'm worried because right now I am not certain as to how many percent was underspent, because we are given figures here. That's a serious concern, Honorable Chair. I hope they will give us the total percentage of underspending for this financial year, so that we are able to have the understanding of exactly what is happening. Because the figures we cannot add together right now as we speak, because we're in the meeting already. Honorable Chair, my question here is about the grading system. I see here there has been a concern here from the CEO as he was actually presenting here, to say there is a grading threshold, which was a concern here and there. But I want to find out, Honorable Chair and the committee members, to find out about how far is the policy reviewing with regards to the free grading that was discussed in the inception of this administration. And we were promised that they are busy with the reviewing of the policies, and this will be actually part of those policies. But I see us going nowhere and receiving any report back to that regard. And to my surprise, we still have variances of underspending, and those various monies which are remaining behind could have made at least an impact to those establishments that cannot afford grading. That's also another question which I also want to be answered by the committee members, by the entity. Honorable Chair, I see here under Program 3, there's been the underspending also there. I don't understand what caused this variance. And also Program 1, when I see, do my calculation quickly, I'm not sure if I'm correct, hence I speak about percentages here, and we are given raw figures here. I wanted to find out, I see the variance of about 15 million on Program 1. And I still don't understand what the variance is called, what caused the variance of this 15 million. But I think you said it's about 15%. But I want you to actually go back to that one and give us a clear explanation so that it can be clear to me as to how did you underspend the budget for this Program 1 and why did you underspend it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to honorable members. And Chairperson, I think I've got a few questions. Chairperson, I think with the fact that we've been living under COVID-19, so I would like to check as to what are the lessons that has the South African tourism learned in hosting Meeting Africa and Africa's Ndaba under the new normal of COVID-19. And also, Chair, I would like to check if the South African tourism has realized any tangible results from the tourism activation that was delivered at the World Expo of 2020 in Dubai last year, December. My last question, therefore, Chair, will be what is the South African tourism doing to ensure that we see a return of establishment whose membership lapsed due to the implementation of the new grading system. Those will be my questions for now, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members, for your question. So I'm going to allow the CEO and his team to respond to your questions. Over to you, CEO and your team.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, honorable members. I am going to respond to as many of the questions as has been posed, and then my team will fill in where I might have specific feedback that needs to be given in their specific areas. I'll start off with the appointment of the CEO, the board, and the issue of the merger with Brand SA. This is my understanding of the status of the two, is that there was an announcement of the impending merger with Brand SA. There have been previous engagements with Brand SA in this regard, both at a departmental level, so between the department and GCIS and the presidency, and also at an organizational level between myself and my counterpart at Brand SA in terms of how to look at the work that we do and how to harmonize it. A cabinet memo has been put together in this regard. It has been sent to GCIS and the presidency for their comment. Once this cabinet memo has been concluded, it will then be sent through to cabinet and debated there. And once adopted, then I think that will then give this committee a very clear direction of what will happen in the merger. The issue around the recruitment of the CEO is that the previous board whose term came to an end at the end of May this year had actually gone through a process of appointing a CEO. The minister did not give her concurrence in that regard and wrote back to the board, to the company secretary to that effect. My understanding is that as it is right now, the recruitment will be done in line with the merged entity that is South African Tourism and Brand SA. You've got on both entities acting CEOs, and I think it gives actually the merger a better opportunity to come together and then appoint somebody who can lead the merged entity. So that is my understanding of where things are set right now in that regard. In terms of the issue around the grading fees, etc., I will defer that to my colleagues to respond to the grading questions. In terms of the forensic investigation, I think it was a question from Honorable Winkler. The process is that there was a forensic audit exercise that was done. The executives that were affected by the outcome of that forensic, there was a consequence management process, some of which was managed at the board level and some of which was managed through the office of the CEO. Those consequence management processes were concluded. And as far as I know, all consequence management has been dealt with. The issue that is still outstanding, which is the next issue, is that there was litigation between South African Tourism and the entities that were affected in the forensic. That issue is actually in court right now. We are waiting for a court date. We have, because they sued us for balance of payments, we have then responded to that and denied that claim. We are waiting for court dates to argue the issue in court. And once we have concluded that particular issue, we will then be able to come back to the committee with the final outcome of that process. I hope that addresses that particular question. In terms of the festive season campaigns, as I mentioned, we launched in February our Live Again campaign, which is an invitation for for South Africans to travel within the country and also for visitors to come from outside the country into the destination. The second phase of that campaign is a mega familiarization program. This is where we're bringing in content creators, we're bringing in journalists, we're bringing in travelers from all our source markets into South Africa so that they can experience the new platform that South Africa has to offer post-COVID lockdown, share that content back into their various source markets, and that will then be able to catalyze travel out of those markets. And to answer the specific question on villages, towns, and small dorpies, the itineraries that we've put together around that mega fam have intentionally moved away from the traditional Joburg, Cape Town, Durban, Kruger triangle, and have actually gone into experiences that the world has not known us for previously. We've been very intentional about it, and that is what is going to drive travel over this new festive season. It is a driving of this mega fam trip, which will then drive media presence and create a buzz for areas and for itineraries that are not normally in our calendar. So that is how we are going to be responding over the next couple of months throughout to the end of the financial year. The next question, I think, was from Honorable De Freitas in terms of how we measure the impact of these campaigns. So a lot of the marketing that we do is actually digitally driven. So we drive it off social media, search engines. We drive it over trade search engines. We drive it over our own, platforms. That gives us a very clear targeting. It gives us a very clear reach. It gives us a very clear, click-through rate. It gives us a very clear bounce rate, and it gives us a commercial return analytic. We've got a very clear dashboard in terms of how we measure the impact of these campaigns. And we know what the impact is on a market-by-market basis, on a period-by-period basis. We even know geographically where the people actually go and what they're looking for. So all of that detailed analytics, for those that are interested in it, can be made available. But there's a very clear metric about how we calculate our return on investment in our campaigns. Obviously, you've got broader advertising, which creates a halo effect. And you've also got your PR elements, which is more about creating an atmosphere of influence so that when the targeted messages are coming through, they land on fertile soil. Those we capture in the brand strength index and how our overall brand power score is performing against our competitors in each of our source markets. And that as well is the other instrument that we use in order to make sure that everything else that we're doing outside of the targeted area that is more in the brand space is able to be captured in an effective manner, and we're able to account for it. So that we are able to respond to. Then there was the issue around the Dubai Expo. The Dubai Expo, as you know, it was a 6-month campaign. The pavilion that was built was led by the DTIC. It was built for all of our sectors. And all that happened is that in any given month, whatever the theme was, that particular department went in to a pavilion that had already been curated for the nation. So the stand was not necessarily a tourism stand, it was a nation stand in which we then ran our campaigns. And as I mentioned earlier, what we did is we made sure that the content program on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, looking at day parts, week parts, all of that content had been prior developed before we went to Dubai. So we already knew what the content program was going to be. So we were able to put a minimum team on the ground inside of the UAE and be able to support that team from South Africa in driving those that content program. And I believe that we were able to achieve the objectives of the campaign. We were able to supply the Auditor General with the portfolio of evidence that was acceptable, and hence our unqualified audit outcome at the end of this period. So I believe that this particular measure was achieved. the issue around, I think it was Honorable Manelli who asked the question about lessons from COVID, especially in our platforms, which is Indaba Meetings Africa. One of the things that we have learned there is that, yes, the world is returning back to a face-to-face environment, but there's still a very huge reliance on hybrid models where you've got digital participation in these platforms. And what we are doing going forward is to make sure that for those that we know thrive on face-to-face interactions, we've built the platform so that we encourage people to actually come and physically attend Africa's Travel Indaba. It was the buzz in Durban, the buzz in Joburg at Meetings Africa, when people that had not seen each other for 2-3 years suddenly saw each other. It reignited the energy, that is tourism, because it's a human interaction industry. But there's no doubt that we have to continue to drive the digital platforms for those that want to trade virtually. And we believe that as we expand the digital platform, we'll be able to bring in more buyers, and we'll be able to bring in a more diversity of participation even from our supply side, so that we're able to enrich the overall experience of our platforms. So we are in better shape now, I believe, than we were when we went into the lockdown, in that we can now run the hybrid model and optimize the transactional value of our strategic platforms. So that is the main gain from a strategic platform standpoint. From an overall marketing standpoint, again, we now live the digital transformation of life in general has been accelerated. So online transaction platforms is where the game has moved to. So we are investing a lot of time and effort in terms of really building our digital capability going forward, and interacting with all the big search engines to make sure that we're able to drive online transactions in order for us to be able to increase our market share in each of our source markets. So that one is, we have also covered. And then in terms of, I think it was Honorable Gomba who asked about the grading system. I'll get my colleagues to respond on that. And there was also an issue around the format of reporting of financial numbers. Honorable Gomba, I do apologize that maybe we did not put the percentages in the drop-down columns, but there was a column where at the bottom it was 91% overall spend. That was actually the percentage column. We had indicated it at the top, but we didn't indicate it in each of the lines. But yes, the percentages were depicted there, and I do apologize for the lack of clarity on that one. In future, we will drop it down, but yes, the percentage numbers were on the slide, but I do apologize for that lack of clarity. So that one, I believe that we have covered as well. I'll then open up the floor to my colleagues, to the CFO, to start off with, just in terms of responding to some of the issues. And I will also ask my colleague, the COO, who has just returned. She was with me in North America. She's just come back from Nigeria, where one of the big issues is around the visa regime there. And I'm sure she's got some learnings that she'd like to share with the committee. So CFO and then COO in that order. Thank you. CFO.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with the first question. I think it was from Honorable Winkler around, and it related to where did we invest the additional funds that we received for grading. I can confirm that we don't transfer funds between programs, because you need that's not allowed in terms of treasury regulations. So the funds were spent in program 5, where we then generated the revenue, and they were spent towards assessor capability building. And the reason for that is because we haven't had an assessor capability session for more than 2 years. So it was critical that for us to be able to give the quality that's required by the establishments that actually pay for the service, we had the session with all our assessors to standardize the process of grading as well as ensuring that there's a similar understanding of the approved grading criteria. There was also a question of clarity from Honorable De Freitas, and I think you were asking about just clarity on whether or not the funds were received or not received that are relating to the grading fees. So when I was dealing with the revenue slide and the revenue line item, I highlighted that, in fact, if you look, there's an over recovery. It's not an under recovery in that line item. And the reason for that is that we have a number of graded establishments that actually qualify for the tourism incentive program funding. So it's financial assistance that's aimed at stimulating growth and development in the tourism sector through providing financial assistance to privately owned tourism enterprises. And there is a predefined criteria that they need to comply with for them to qualify. And those specific funds are funds that we get from the department. They hit our books. The tool that we use, in fact, to transact with the department, there's an MOU, so they hit our books in the balance sheet. We account for them as unearned revenue. It's only when a graded establishment qualify for the incentive that we then recognize the amount in our income statement. There was a chair. There was also a financial question from Honorable Gomba around program 1, where she just asked that I provide clarity on the 15%. Chair, the reason I emphasized the actual expenditure slide in program 1 is because, and it's consistent with how we've reported in the past and consistent with previous financial information that has been audited. Included in any actual expenditure that you see that we've accounted for is both cash and non-cash items. And the reason for that is because SA Tourism has to comply with accounting standards, and the accounting standard we comply with when we compile our financial statement is GRAP. So, Chair, in fact, the 15% is more than the budget. And the reason for that is the non-cash items that are included in that actual expenditure. So included in the actual expenditure that you see in program 1, corporate support, is your amortization and depreciation expenditure. So that's how we depreciate our assets over the useful life. And also included in that line item is the unrealized foreign exchange losses. So when we then do our consolidated reporting, we take all our financial books for the country offices that we have. So in different financial denominations, we then convert them to ZAR. So the impact of that conversion, we have to account for it. Yes, it's non-cash, but we have to account for it in our books. And that's where you see then the impact under actual expenditure. Chair, I'll pause and then hand over to the COO. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to the honorable members. Just to augment on the question about the less visited areas, the question was asked by Honorable Makubela in terms of what we're doing to make sure that the less visited areas are also highlighted, and the specific question was about the collaborations. I just want to add that what we are doing over and above what the acting CEO was saying in terms of the itinerary re-engineering, making sure that we focus on those areas. We are also partnering with our provincial tourism authorities who are helping us to really unearth some of those hidden gems in those less visited routes. So they've been quite instrumental in doing that. Case in point, in the recent Nigeria Tourism Roadshow that South African Tourism has hosted just recently, SA Tourism managed to actually take with us 25 SMMEs that specialize in hidden gems and our products from those less visited areas to actually be part of the roadshow, giving them access to market and helping to showcase those less visited areas. So that is in addition to that question about those less visited areas. The second question on the e-visas, if I can maybe share the case study in terms of the West African market where this e-visa is a huge issue. The Department of Home Affairs has actually come to the party in that particular market. They have, starting 2 weeks ago, launched the e-visa system, which is an alternative way of generating visas, meaning that traditionally in that market, people were flying around that big country to go to the capital, Abuja, to actually drop their documents for processing of the applications. Now that has come to an end. They have now, as of 2 weeks ago, started implementing the e-visa system. So far, it's going well. There are obviously some glitches in terms of some of the travelers looking for additional information. For example, the current system, the new system is not telling them the duration of the process that it takes for the processing of the visas. But the good thing is that they would put all their documents online and they will get the verdict of the application also online without having to actually drive or fly to a physical office. That was very much well received in the market because this was launched as we were there last week. And together the CGs from Abuja and Lagos, they actually went on the road show with us, and that has been received well. So I would say that there's huge progress, but I think the case was made that it remains a Home Affairs project, and we take our lead from the continue to have engagements with them as part of our global advocacy to make sure that help us to create efficiencies in how the travelers get to South Africa, because it is a barrier. Thank you so much, honorable members. Thank you.
I see more hands.
Thank you, honorable members.
Are those
With regards to the grading council queries, they were regarding the rollover of the system and the number of establishments that have renewed, and the questions regarding what has been done to get the establishments back on track. To clarify, the system changeover happened during the course of last year. In that process, some of the establishments dropped off the registration process and chose not to renew. However, efforts have been made through engagements and workshops through the quality assurance team with establishments to get them back on track and back into the system, which has been quite successful so far this year.
Are you still responding to questions? Are you not done with questions? Bronwyn, I've been calling out your name. So you were still responding to questions.
Honorable.
Mr. Kumalo.
Yes, Honorable Chair. Yes, we're still responding to questions.
Are you still responding to questions? Because I see I don't know whether these hands are legacy hands from you, Honorable Defrators. Is it a legacy hand or a follow-up question?
My apology, I'll put it down, sorry.
Sorry? Okay. CEO, continue.
Thank you, Chair. There was a question around, was there any fruitless expenditure during in Q4 of last financial year? And the answer to that question is no. There was no fruitless expenditure in Q4 last year. And then there was a question around the domestic airlift by Honorable Winkler, that are we engaging with our airlift partners? Absolutely. As we know, the loss of airlift capacity, has got, is affected by a number of factors. One was, the safety issues, but also it was also around the crude oil price, which is a global issue generated by the war between Russia and the Ukraine, among other things. Yes, we have engaged not only domestically with, the domestic partners, but also with the Africa. There was an Africa airlift summit that happened in Cape Town last month, where we're also engaging with the Africa airlines that fly into South Africa. And as we know, we've got Airlink that flies, across the region. It is an issue that is concerning, and we are continuing to engage with all of our airlift partners, including the provincial ones in the Western Cape, in KZN, and in Gauteng, just to make sure that the air access into the market and inside, the mobility within South Africa, is we continue to improve that. It's a continuous engagement issue. There's moving parts, but yes, that is part of the work that we are doing on an ongoing basis. Thank you very much, Chair. I believe that we have covered all of the questions that have been raised, and I will hand back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO, and with your team. And also thanks the honorable members for their productive participation in our meetings as always. If there is nothing else, honorable members, I would want to declare this meeting closed. Is that a follow-up question, Honorable De Freitas, or your question was not answered?
No, Chair, I'd like to bring another matter up before the meeting closes, if I may.
Is a matter from the presentation from the one that was tabled before us?
No, I'd like to bring up a different matter.
What if the matter is not on the agenda, you have to write to the office.
It is on the agenda.
What do you mean? Because what is on the agenda is the presentation, a briefing by South African Tourism. So if this matter that you are bringing is not arising from that presentation, you can't bring different things in the presentation and process.
Sorry, Chair, I was on mute. No, it's on the agenda. I just want to know when I can bring it up. Thanks.
What is that?
Just the next item, the draft committee program. Thanks.
Sorry?
The next item, the draft committee program.
We are not there yet.
Yes,
Fine.
that's right. But you were going to close the meeting. That's why.
Yes, I'm going to close the meeting in terms of the presentation by SAT so that we release them, because they can't be part of that session. Do you get me?
That's fine, Chair.
Comrade, sorry, CEO, you can now be released so that I close this session and continue with our meeting. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you. You are now released.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Mr. Bolsina?
Hello, Chairperson. That we wanted the committee to look at it, Chairperson. Chair, if we look at
Can you take us to September? We are in September now.
Yes, that's what I want to do. Okay, go further down, Sbu. Okay, go further down. Okay, Chair, this is the area that we just wanted the committee to confirm, so that we can proceed with the other processes. Today we had the SAT test. Next week, last week the committee proposed that we should also be engaging the Department of Transport and the South African Police Service concerning this whole issue of the long distance buses, Chairperson. That's also what we want to bring to the attention of the committee. Go further down, Spoon. Yes, okay. Chair, if you look at the 23rd, we are proposing that now that the committee has suggested that the tourism summit of the committee, we need to extend it into a full day. We are making a two proposal, Chair, to the committee. One, because Friday is not our sitting day, then we will have to ask that Friday to the office of the House Chairperson. What we have done here, we have looked at the 23rd of September and the 30th of September. So we are bringing these two Fridays to the attention of the committee so that the committee can look at these two Fridays and see which of the appropriate Fridays that we can use as a portfolio committee for our tourism transformation summit, Chairperson. We have tried to look into the Tuesday. It is not working out, Chairperson, because of plenaries of the National Assembly. We have also looked at on a Wednesday. It also doesn't work out because a Wednesday is not our time. So our allocated slot. Now we are only left with Fridays where that we can explore. But because it's not our meeting day, so we have just thought that let's look at two options. And then we presented those options to the committee so that the committee can give us guidance, looking into the diaries of members as to which of the two Fridays, the 23rd and the 30th of September, which of those 2 dates we can utilize as a portfolio committee for our proposed tourism summit. And then if we got that guidance, then we will make a representation to the office of the House chairperson. Chairperson. That's what we are requesting from the committee to guide us on this matter, so that the date or any Friday that we choose, at least it will be a Friday that is more appropriate and also is relevant to the diaries of the portfolio committee members. Can you go further down, Sue? Okay. Chair, again, the committee will recall. The committee will recall that there was that request that the committee wanted to go to Kenya, but because of the national elections in that country, we were not able to do that, chairperson. And after those elections, then they were still busy with the establishment of a new administration there. So the process that is still taking place. And then the chair suggested that, and then in the meanwhile, why then don't we consider taking the next country, now that Kenya is still going on with its election processes and all of that? Then the only slot that we can identify, chairperson, from the portfolio, from the program of the National Assembly, is that period of the 3rd up to the 7th of the committee. And then the country that we have identified is France, chairperson. So this is what we are taking to the committee, so that the committee can look at this date and see whether they agree with us. And if the committee does agree with this proposal, then we will take this program and submit it to the office of the House chairperson as amended program, chairperson. So that's also what we wanted the committee, just to assist us on it, to confirm it, whether is date okay, that we can undertake this proposed international study tour. If it does, then we can submit this to the office of the House chairperson. I do know, Chair, the House Chair will whip us on that, in that we have gone outside the parameters as prescribed by the Parliament by the National Assembly Programming Committee. But we just thought that because the committee proposed it that way, and then this is the date that we can come with in the circumstances. Then if the committee does agree with us, then we will submit this program to the office of the House chairperson as amended the program. Then we can take it from going forward. So those are the areas, chairperson, that we wanted the committee just to assist us in confirming them. Thank you, chairperson.
Okay, then thank you very much, Mr. Bolton. Firstly, I think the meeting for next Tuesday, it shall proceed, and because we need to reflect and deliberate on the presentation as presented, but I had hoped that before we could meet as this interim committee, we would have received a presentation from Santiago as well, because I think it would be only fair for us to meet after we have received that presentation from Santiago. And also on the summit, the 30th of September would be viable, so that we are able to adjust our diaries where necessary, and be all in that particular summit as honorable members. On the Paris, France, to the 3 to the 7th of October, I think as a team, you must also look into another alternative country so that the house chair is able to make a choice between the two countries, because I'm fearing a situation where we send one country and we are let down. Petra, why is your hand up? Yeah? You can't have your hand up here. This is our session. So I think we need to move like that because if she says no, not this country, we must have a fallback on. So you need to ponder around that with the team, and we must do it as soon as possible. Honorable Defrators, I see your hand has been up even before the presentation was made on this item.
Sorry, Chair, I'm finding it very difficult to hear you. I'm not sure if I heard my name, but I can't hear.
Sorry?
I'm just saying I did hear my name, but I can't hear you.
I
your
said
signal's
the
very bad.
platform is yours. That's what I was saying.
Yes.
I was saying the platform is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Jerry, for the update. I just wanted to ask. Sorry, Chair, you're in a very noisy space, and it's very difficult to talk over. What I wanted to check, my understanding, I mean, I've been in other committees that they've been able to accommodate the committees on another day besides ours, on a Wednesday and so forth. What seems to be the problem? They won't accommodate the tourism committee on a Wednesday, for example. That's my first question. My other point is, I see that the summit is envisaged as basically a day. Possibly the committee could think about splitting it as a proposal, but also what are the details of the summit? Has there been planning put together? What are the details? And then my last point is the trip abroad, and perhaps Jerry could help us. My understanding is that we've submitted certain countries. My understanding was Kenya and France. Are we permitted to then change, to make changes to this? I see you've listed still France there. Are we permitted to add on other countries, as the chair is mentioning? But my point is also that if we do end up going to France, may I suggest that we don't, it specifically mentions here on the schedule Paris, and although it'd be interesting to spend some time there and see how they do it in a metro, if we can ensure that we incorporate, one or two other little dorpies, perhaps outside of Paris that is not linked to Paris, to see how they do it as a small village or whatever the case is, and we can then kind of extrapolate what they do there into our local circumstances. Those are my points. Thanks very much.
Bad prognosis of what, because the program has not been tabled to the portfolio committee. All that we need to do is to agree on the dates and the country. And I think when the secretary of the committee was presenting on this matter, she did mention why not Kenya. Perhaps he must again clarify why not Kenya, or repeat what he said earlier on why not Kenya, because now hello, because now, can you hear me?
Yes, Chair.
Honorable De Freitas.
Yes.
Okay, so am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah, so, but I'm going to allow the committee secretary to respond on the matter that you are raising.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chair. Chair, the committee will recall in our strategic planning session, when we finalized that trade plan, there were three alternatives that the committee came up with.
Sorry, Chair, it's very difficult to hear Jerry. You seem to be very noisy on your side.
Okay, Chairperson.
Why is it difficult to hear, Jerry?
Hello, Chair.
Why is it difficult to hear, Jerry, Honorable De Freitas?
Because you're in a noisy place and I can hardly hear anything.
Yeah, you must deal with your network. There's no noisy place where I am. Maybe noisy place is where you are.
No, you're unmuted, and so I can hear the surrounding noise. Thanks.
Continue, Mr. Bolton.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I was just indicating to the committee, when we were finalizing our strat plan, the committee came up with three names, Chair. One, it was Kenya. Two, it was France. The third one was the USA, Chairperson. Then we unfortunately at that time when we were considering the Kenya, we were not aware at that time that the country will be going to elections on the 9th of August. So because of those election processes in their country, so we were not able then to proceed and go there and take an international benchmarking while they were busy with their election on that side. Then on the basis of that, the chair said then while they are still busy with the establishment of the new administration, then can't we take the second country and on our list as a committee? Then that second country on our list is France, honorable members. Then if I'm hearing the chair now, he says then why then also don't we take two options, so that if we don't succeed on option one, which is France, then there will also be another option which could be another country as well on the list of the committee. I think if I'm hearing or I'm following the discussion correctly, it's around the 30 Chairperson. Chair, you will correct me if I'm not accurate.
Okay. Honorable Makubela, followed by Honorable Gomba.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine is on the issue of the dates of the planned workshop that the committee needs to have. I see the Secretariat has proposed 2 Fridays, one Friday the 23rd and one Friday the 30th. I want to suggest that we put an application to have the workshop on a Wednesday, because Wednesday, the plenary is for questions to the executive. We can ask for an exemption as this portfolio committee to conduct the workshop on a Wednesday. Then we'll have a full day from morning up until late afternoon. The reasons that I am suggesting this is because I see that the Friday, the 23rd, it's just close to Saturday, the 24th, which is a public holiday. That might be having its own fair of challenges in terms of membership, even of those that we would want to be in the workshop would be presenting to us and giving us information so that we can be adequately engaged. That is my proposal, Chairperson, because Friday, I foresee us not having adequate coverage of members, not ourselves as honorable members, but those that must come to the portfolio committee. That's my submission, Chairperson.
Honorable Gomba.
Thank you very much. Honorable Chair, I think there has been a problem here in terms of the selection of countries. If I recall well, there was this option to say that we are going to that overseas country and via Kenya as one trip, so that we don't have to come back to Kenya as a country alone. So I'm just worried, how did the application go to Kenya alone when the committee agreed that it will be via Kenya going towards Paris or France? So it is actually delaying us, because it could have we could have actually processed the France trip even at the same time with the Kenya one, and this should have not been a problem. Right now we have to start again to apply for the other one, when we said they must be put together so that we can have African country and the international at the same time. How was it? How did it come that they are separated? It's my worry, Honorable Chair. But also, I think that period, if Mr. Jerry is talking about that free period being in the recess period, I think it will be better than disrupting the program of Parliament. And also, it will be good if we can just confirm with them so that they can start with the processes, because the more we wait in processing the dates and we don't agree, the worse it becomes late. You know, the worse late it becomes. So I suggest that maybe we give them some thumbs up so that they can process the application if needs be. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Honorable members, I think we are not going to overemphasize the limitations of Kenya, even if we're via Kenya or what. Still, there's a new government in Kenya, and they need to put systems in place. That's why we are not doing Kenya, whether we via or not buying in Kenya. So I think that clarity was tabled correctly and clinically by the Secretary of the Committee. Honorable Manel.
Chairperson, I think in noting the limitations of Kenya, and also from the explanation Secretary, I will then propose that, because you already indicated that you had 3 top countries that you wanted to visit. So can you just remind the members as to what was the 3rd country in case I missed it? And then you take a decision as the committee to say, what will then be the alternative of France? I think in that way, Chair will have a way forward around this matter and be able to conclude it. So can you just remind us in case I missed it, Chairperson?
The 3rd country is the US. And hence I suggested that the team should put proposals to the House Chair on both countries, so that any of the 2, if it is approved, we are good to go on a study tour. But I will allow the committee secretary to respond on your questions and concerns. Thank you. On Mr. Poltina, if Dr. Kuzwayo also wants to add, can add on your responses. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, it's exactly the way you have just indicated to the members. That 1, it was Kenya. 2, it was France. Thirdly, it was the USA. But the other issue that the committee raised when we were discussing this matter was the whole issue of cost that might be involved. So the committee agreed in that meeting, let's take one African country. So that African country, it was Kenya, Travis. The only issue now that we have with the Kenya is that they are still establishing the new government there after elections and all of those things. Then that's the only thing that prohibited us not to proceed with that. So we are now left with these two countries, which I hear that the committee is saying, let's not submit for one, let's submit for two, that in case one doesn't go through, then at least we have a fallback position for the second one. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable members, are we all clear? Honorable Gomba, is that a legacy hand? I would want to close this matter. Honorable De Freitas, Honorable Gomba, followed by Honorable De Freitas. Honorable Gomba. Honorable De Freitas.
Thanks,
I don't know
Chair.
what's happening with Honorable Gomba, yes?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted just to support the proposal that we look at the 28th possibly, because we do have our cluster has oral questions in the House. So many of us will be down in Cape Town, and the plenary starts at 3 o'clock. So we could still actually do our summit, or our meeting, workshop from kind of 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock till 2, which would cover a full day. So perhaps we could make that as a proposal. And also, I just would like to ask that the administration send us a draft agenda in advance. And then on the international travel, it's a pity that we wouldn't be able to go to Kenya, although I understand the reasons. I wanted to ask Jerry or any of the administration, I would still be interested in going to an African country because it's a lot closer to home, if you know what I mean. So my question to Jerry is, what are the possibilities of looking at another country, also taking costs into account, and then if we could then again make sure that wherever other countries we visit, we make sure we do go and visit Dorpies and little towns and see how they do tourism there. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. I would like to close on this matter. The committee will submit the countries which we have on the table to the House Chair. So we'll take it from there. And also, the general feeling is that we start with the summit on the 28th at 9 o'clock. And if honorable members would confirm the availability, I think it will make the work of the committee, the support staff for the committee seamlessly. And so they must all confirm their availability by email to Honorable Boltina, at least by the end of business tomorrow, so that they are able to plan accordingly. Otherwise, our meeting is adjourned if there is nothing else. And can you please lower your legacy hands, please, because I won't allow any hands now. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.